You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC Vegas 109, Dolidze versus Hernandez, live from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, with a main event between top-ranked middleweight contenders in the physical specimen and grappling ace known as Roman Dolidze, taking on the pressure fighter, the slow-cooking, marathon-running, absolute nightmare to deal with in the cage. Not Carlos Prates, but Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. Not the biggest fan of that intro this week, but we got fights to break down, baby, and I don't want to waste time. We could talk a little bit about last week. I thought the fights were good. We got the last 3 fights in a row correct, but there were just some fights that I couldn't believe went the way that they did. Like, I had the Esteban and Brenner fight to end by knockout, and I had Esteban by knockout. If Esteban wins by KO, I win like $300, $400. Last week, it was, what was the fight last week? Shara by KO I needed, or submission, honestly. I picked a double chance, and that would have won me $400. So, like, the last 2 weeks, my parlay's off by one leg. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I really don't. I picked Esteban as the winner. Maybe I got greedy playing the KO. It was plus 165, so I thought it was a good value on a guy who tends to get rocked and wobbled even if he doesn't get finished. But, I mean, he was a punching bag for 2 rounds and then came back. It was a great fight. Brenner is a tough son of a bitch. And, there's really nothing else you could say. Came back in the 3rd round, landed some big shots on Esteban, and it looked like that was going to be it, man. Like, he was starting to hurt him and rock him. I thought maybe that Brenner was going to come back in round 3, like he does in some other fights, like the fight with Garam Kutateladze, and I believe there was another fight where he came back in the 3rd round. That might have been against Subaira Tukhugov in his UFC debut where he was a big underdog. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, the card kind of went how I expected. Nora Cornell was a terrible pick. Looked decent in the 1st round. I thought maybe we were onto something. Just didn't go the way that we thought. The KO 2-3 for Pulayev was like plus 500. We called that pretty good. Zaleski and Magny, I mean, I just can't pick Dos Santos anymore. That's my bad. I just figured he had enough to beat the veteran Neil Magny, but I think that was just a bad pick on my part. I would say my 2 worst picks from last week were not Brenner. Oh my God, I picked Ribovics. Were Cornell and Zaleski Dos Santos. The other ones I got wrong, I don't feel too bad about, but those 2, I think it was just bad picks overall, and maybe I got too complacent. So we're gonna come into this week and we're gonna try to right the wrongs from last week, and hopefully we can do so. Let's kick it off with the first fight in the welterweight division. And by the way, before we get started, I'll give you a quick breakdown of Gabriela Fernandes and Julia Stoliarenko. If Stoliarenko is able to get the takedowns or jump guard, I think she could submit Fernandes. But I think Fernandes is going to have too much pressure on top, even if they do go to the ground. I think she'll know that the arm bars are going to be coming. And even if you know, sometimes you don't stop it. But I think she's going to know that they're coming, and she's going to land those folding elbows over the top and hammer fists. And I think the ground and pound is going to be on or available for Fernandes on the ground, and I think on the feet she's just going to absolutely butcher Stoliarenko. Stoliarenko is like a modern day Ronda Rousey, except she doesn't have any power or striking ability on the feet, so Ronda was a more well-rounded version. And when you're that one-dimensional, like, sometimes it works, but in modern MMA it's very hard to be successful in being a one-dimensional fighter. So I could see like a round 1 armbar if Fernandes just completely abandons the game plan and thinks she can follow her to the ground, which it's women's MMA, so it's possible. But I think she'll just survive the 1st round, beat her up with ground and pound, get into round 2, stop the takedowns, and then TKO her on the feet. So I'm going to take Gabriela Fernandes, round 2 TKO. I don't have it pictured, so clearly it'll just be in this little intro section of the podcast. But yeah, I think Fernandes just avoids that armbar, which is kind of Stoliarenko's only win condition, and then just beats her up and eventually TKOs her late in the 2nd round. So Fernandes, TKO round 2 is going to be the pick for that one. Now let's get back to what we were talking about, which is Uros Medic versus Gilbert Urbina. So Medic versus Urbina. This is an interesting fight. Every fight starts on the feet, and the much better striker is Medic. I think that the better pressure fighter overall is Urbina, but I kind of see this being similar to when Medic knocked out, who was it the night that Pereira fought Blachowicz? Let's see. Eros Medic. I think that was 2023 maybe. Semmelsberger, yep, UFC 291. I think this is going to be a little bit similar to the Semmelsberger fight. I think Urbina's decent. I think he's got a lot of pressure. I think he's got good forward pressure. And I think that's how he's going to have to win, right? You're going to have to put Medic on the back foot. You're going to have to watch out for the counter striking. And you're going to have to smother him. Get him up against the fence. Land elbows over the top. Land knees to the body. Get him against the cage. Take him down. If Urbina takes down Medic, I think he probably finishes him on the ground. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that Medic has little to no grappling at all. I think that Medic is a fish out of water when he's on his back. And I think the pressure of Urbina probably would get to a guy like Medic in the late portions of the second round and into the third round. So, if you're taking a shot on Urbina and you think that the pressure is going to work and the forward pressure and the wrestling is going to work, I completely understand. And it might. I think that there's a good chance that if Medic doesn't spark him in the first 6-7 minutes, that Urbina is probably pushing forward. Medic is on the back foot looking to counter, and Urbina's probably landing the jabs, slipping the counters, and trying to push Medic up against the cage. Get those takedowns, suck his hips out, land elbows inside the clinch, get to the body lock, work from the double to the single to the body lock, knees, elbows, break down, go back down to the takedown, and just wear out Medic. Get him on the ground, make him tired with some ground and pound, and probably set up a submission late. But beating a guy like Orion Kosi, I think it was Orion Kosi. I could be wrong. One of the Kosi brothers. That doesn't impress me. He looked decent against Brian Battle, but that was early Brian Battle. I think at this point, if they fought each other, Urbina would get smoked. He did fight Sean Brady, and I believe made it to a decision early in Brady's career, back when he was in CFFC. But I just think Medic is too crisp and too clean and too technical for Urbina on the feet. We saw Charles Radke drop Urbina with a big left hook, and Radke's got a lot of power. But I think in terms of technicality and overall technical skill on the feet, Medic is going to be the much better striker. And I think he's going to be able to use that footwork, that movement, circle on the outside, that straight left down the middle, the 1-2 down the middle. And I think he's just going to be catching Urbina as he comes in. I think it's going to be a lot of defense with the takedowns early. But I think eventually that left hand is just going to land right down the middle on the chin of Urbina, and I think he's going to put him away. And if he doesn't, put him away with one shot, I think he could rock him and then follow up with an uppercut, kind of like what he did against Tim Means, because we know that Urbina is going to be looking to forward pressure and looking to change levels. So I think those knees and uppercuts from Medic are going to be there as well. Again, I'm not supremely confident in picking a guy like Medic, because I think if it does go to the ground, that's probably where Urbina has the advantage, but I just don't trust his durability, and I don't trust his ability to take down a guy like Medic. So I think it stays on the feet. I think if it stays on the feet, it's mainly a Medic fight for the majority of it. So give me Uros Medic. Give me the doctor to win this fight. Get back in the win column with a first-round knockout over Gilbert Urbina. Could be round 2, but I think he cracks him early, puts him down, and finishes him off. So give me Uros Medic. Give me the doctor. Round 1 KO over Gilbert Urbina. Jocelyn Edwards and Priscilla Cachoeira. Cachoeira had that crazy knockout in her last fight against Josiane Nunes inside the clinch. Just landed a huge uppercut, put her down, completely knocked her out cold. I think in this fight, we know that Cachoeira has a problem with getting up off of her back. She has a problem in stuffing takedowns. When she gets taken down, it's very hard for her to get back up, and she doesn't really throw up a ton of submissions off of her back. I think we've seen that Edwards is more willing to go to her wrestling and grappling than she is to stand and strike. I know she knocked out Chelsea Chandler, but I think that was an easy fight. That was a layup. Chelsea Chandler's not UFC level, and she's never been UFC level. So I kind of think in this fight, there is that danger factor with Cachoeira. Cachoeira has big power. If she shoots a takedown and she kind of telegraphs it, I could see a knee or an uppercut coming in from Cachoeira and potentially hurting and finishing off Jocelyn Edwards. I think she's going to kind of mitigate the risk, minimize the window for Cachoeira to have success, and just put on that forward pressure, use some fakes and feints up top, feint the jab, feint the uppercut, hip feint, and then go in for the takedown. And I think she's going to push Cachoeira up against the fence. I think she's going to beat her up on the ground. I think, again, like we've seen in so many Cachoeira fights, it's going to be very hard for her to get back up to the feet. And I think it's going to be Edwards, landing some shots in half guard, landing some elbows, landing some ground and pound, sliding over to the full mount, beating her up with ground and pound, and then eventually just locking up a rear naked choke. I mean, that's really what I see here, and I don't think it'll be in the first round. I know she finished Chandler in the first round, but like I said, I think Cachoeira would absolutely body Chelsea Chandler, at least at this point in both of their careers. I think she probably knocks her out, and probably knocks her out in the first round, similar to Jocelyn Edwards. I think Edwards is getting better. I think her striking is getting better. But again, I think she's going to be smart and play on the outside, stay at her range, use her reach advantage in this fight. And then once she starts to feel that the threat is not there as much, she's going to use the clinch entry. She's going to feint into the takedowns, and she's going to start getting those takedowns. She's going to start beating her up on the ground. I think Cachoeira will give up her back. I think Edwards will put those hooks in, sync up the rear naked choke, and get a round 2 submission. So my overall pick, I'm going to take Jocelyn Edwards. I'm going to take Edwards round 2 rear naked choke submission. I could see ground and pound. I mean, there's no reason why Jasmine Jasudavicius wasn't able to finish her off with ground and pound in that fight. We were on the sub 2-3, so it worked out in our favor. But that fight probably should have been called off by TKO, and it wasn't. I could see a similar situation here where she's going for the sub, but Cachoeira's just turtling up and defending, and she just gets beat up with ground and pound, and the ref stops it. But I think she's going to ground and pound her. I think she's going to slow cook her in that first round, get an easy takedown early in round 2, beat her up with ground and pound. I think Cachoeira's going to turn and give up her back. She's going to sink that rear naked choke in and get the tap. So give me Jocelyn Edwards to win. I'm going to take Edwards round 2 rear naked choke submission. I think the grappling is just a huge hole in the game of Cachoeira, and I think Edwards is going to play it safe by using her reach on the feet and using the fakes and feints to close the distance and get it to the ground. Well, she'll have a huge advantage. So the pick is Jocelyn Edwards, round 2, rear naked choke submission in this fight. All right, next up, we got a battle in the bantamweight division between Elijah Smith taking on Toshiomi Kazama. Yeah, I'm going Elijah Smith here. I'm not even going to waste your guys' time. Kazama is a fish out of water on the feet. He has practically no defense. He dives at takedowns for his life. He needs the takedown to have any sort of success because this guy is mainly a jiu-jitsu fighter in the UFC. I mean, he got knocked out by Rinya Nakamura. He got almost stopped by Charlampos Gregorio and then found that Hail Mary submission, which is still crazy to me because I thought that was an easy win for Gregorio. But, yeah, in a lot of his fights, I mean, he's getting pieced up. He has no defense. He doesn't move his head. And Elijah Smith is a clean striker. Like, do I think he's a top-level bantamweight? No. But do I think he has enough to absolutely run through and demolish Toshiomi Kazama? Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an easy fight for Elijah Smith. I wouldn't be surprised if he closes like minus 900 when we get to fight night. But if you want to be smart, just wait. Play Elijah Smith inside the distance. Probably KO, I would say, because I don't think he's going to risk the chance that he goes for a sub and Kazama gets out and maybe like goes for a guillotine. He switches to the other side and goes for like a Von Flue choke or something random. So I'm going to say Elijah Smith KO. I think he knocks out Kazama. Like I said, he just has nothing on the feet. He doesn't have a lot of good defense. He doesn't really move his head. His head's on the center line. The takedowns are pretty telegraphed, and he's terrified to get hit. Like, you can tell that once this guy gets cracked, he's backing up, he's looking to run away, and he's looking to shoot very telegraphed takedowns. I think Smith is way too good for that. He's way too clean with his striking. Good uppercuts, good right hand. He kind of turns that right hand over. Good jab, solid calf kicks. I think he's going to mitigate the use of the kicks and minimize the overall kicking game that he's going to use in this fight and just use a lot of hip feints, use a lot of angles, and set up his punching combinations and really use his boxing to get a pretty quick KO here. So I'm going to take Elijah Smith to get a first-round knockout over Toshiomi Kazama. Could be round 2. Maybe like he's fighting for his life. He's holding on for takedowns and he's damaged, but he makes it to the second round. But I'm going to say he doesn't even make it to round 2. So give me Elijah Smith. Round 1 KO. I think the boxing and the power in his hands is just way too much. And Smith will be smart enough to not really play in the grappling too much with this guy. So, yeah, I think Elijah Smith pieces him up. So give me Elijah Smith, round 1 KO. The combinations are going to be too much for Kazama. All right, guys, next up we got a battle in the middleweight division between Eric Anders and Christian Leroy Duncan. In this fight, guys, I think it's pretty safe to say that Christian Leroy Duncan probably is just going to be too much for Eric Anders. Like, Anders is good at crashing the distance, getting in close, landing a big bomb. And, with the hands down low, the side stance, and the kind of reliance on footwork and head movement from CLD, like, there is a possibility that Anders lands a big shot. Like, maybe he cracks him with a big left hook. Maybe he cracks him with an overhand right as he closes the distance and hurts him. I mean, Gregory Rodriguez cracked him a few times, and he didn't, drop him and rock him to the point where he almost TKO'd him, but he did hurt him a lot. And Anders has a lot of power, so there's always that chance that big right hand, that big left hook, catches CLD at the right time and puts him down, but I don't think that's going to happen. People are going to say, well, maybe Anders will shoot some takedowns and take down CLD. I don't think he has good enough wrestling to take him down. If he does take him down, I don't think he's going to hold him down like Gregory Rodriguez did. People are probably going to point to that Gregory Rodriguez fight and say, well, he took him down, he held him down, he beat him up a little bit. I think Gregory Rodriguez would run through Eric Anders, especially at this point in their career. And you have to look at recent performances. Like against Pulayev, he basically had him knocked out in the third round of that fight. It wasn't the best performance from Leroy Duncan, but he basically had him KO'd, had him put up against the fence, elbows, uppercuts, knees, and, he made it to the end. Credit to Pulayev, but that was basically a TKO in my book. And Eric Anders got dropped by Chris Weidman, got controlled on the mat for a while. He almost got caught in a guillotine, but then he just survived and finished a guy who's pretty much a relic at this point in Chris Weidman. And I love Weidman. I picked Weidman to beat Eric Anders. So that's not a crack on Weidman. It's just the truth of the situation. And with this fight, I think CLD is going to be too fleet-footed. He's going to be too fast, too crisp, too clean for a guy like Eric Anders. And aside from a big power shot where he could knock him out, kind of like he did with the Kyle Dawkins fight, but there was a bunch of headbutts in that fight as well, I think that it's knockout or bust for Eric Anders. And with the fact that he's been hurt so many times in his recent fights, I just think the footwork, the angles, the combinations, the 1-2s, the elbows inside the clinch, the knees, the improvement in the clinch work of CLD, I think is really what's going to push him towards a win in this fight. I think he'll kind of pick them apart, get the range, get the distance in round one, start landing jabs, start landing 1-2s. I think in round two, they start to tie up because Anders knows he can't strike with them at distance. And then that's when CLD starts to push him against the fence and work his clinch striking with, knees up the middle, little shoulder bump uppercuts, overhands, elbows. And I think he folds him up against the fence and TKOs him in the second round. I think we'll see CLD use that footwork and movement to evade and then start to push forward and slowly break down Anders, get him against the fence, and beat him up in the clinch. Elbows, uppercuts, knees, and put a big elbow on him over the top and finish him off. So I got Christian Leroy Duncan here. I think it's a pretty good pick, but again, Anders has a lot of power, so maybe you just want to take the fight, doesn't go the distance. I don't think this fight goes the distance because I think CLD finishes him off with a KO. So I'm going to take Christian Leroy Duncan, second round knockout, up against the fence, inside the clinch, an elbow over the top, folds Eric Anders, and the ref stops it. Give me Christian Leroy Duncan, round 2 TKO over Eric Anders. That's going to be my pick for this fight, and now we're going to move on. All right, next fight up is in the bantamweight division. You have a battle between Miles Choppa Johns taking on Gene Matsumoto. Guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I just don't see an area where Miles Johns wins this fight. He doesn't have enough volume, and that's something I've talked about in multiple fight breakdowns with Miles Johns. He just doesn't have enough volume for me. Like, he throws big overhands. He throws a decent jab. Sometimes he'll throw an uppercut, but for the most part, he's measuring with that lead hand. He's faking and feinting. He's changing levels, and it's a big uppercut. He's faking. He's moving around. He's using the jab, feinting the jab. Boom, big overhand right. And I just think Matsumoto's too crisp and clean to get caught by that. And some people are probably going to come in here and say that Miles Johns might use those threats with the big overhands and the looping punches and the uppercuts to change levels and get takedowns. Even if he somehow gets Matsumoto down to the ground, I think Matsumoto probably hops on a guillotine choke like he caught Dan Argueta with. I think he has decent enough guard work to be able to use that knee shield and get up to a hip, get on his elbow, kick off, get to the fence, circle back towards Johns and then circle off the fence. I think he's good enough defensively and he has a good enough get-up game. He has decent enough threats on the ground to threaten with submissions. And, I would say maybe to take Matsumoto by a finish because I think He's going to have better combinations. I don't think he has enough more power than Miles Johns, but he has better combinations. He uses better kicks, and he's got good enough grappling defense to, I think, just outshine Miles Johns in this fight kind of anywhere it goes. I don't see Johns holding down Matsumoto. I don't see him outstriking him. I don't see him outvoluming him. And like I said, aside from a big overhand or a big uppercut that catches Matsumoto off guard and maybe wins him a close round, I don't really see Johns finishing Matsumoto either. He seems too smart and to have too high of a fight IQ than to have gotten caught by a guy like Miles Johns, who's just kind of a one-dimensional, one punch at a time type of guy who can use his power and physicality to take guys down and hold them there. And I just don't see him doing that to Matsumoto either. I think Matsumoto lands more shots over the 15 minutes. I think he lands better combinations. I think he uses good low kicks and, pairs that up with a decent jab, a 1-2, faint little shoulder roll bump to the rear uppercut. I think he hurts Johns at a certain point and probably jumps a guillotine, but Johns gets out. But instead of being able to hold him down, I think Matsumoto works back up to the feet. I think he controls the range, maybe gets some takedowns of his own and wins this fight pretty clear-cut on the scorecards. I'm going to say 30-27, unanimous decision for Gene Matsumoto. Like I said, I could see a finish, but I don't want to bank on it because Johns just finds a way to not get finished in most fights. But if there's a guy who can finish him, I think it might be Matsumoto. And people are going to be like, oh, well, he lost to Rob Font and this and that. Rob Font would absolutely butcher Miles Johns at this point in their careers. And so that's not a knock on Matsumoto to lose to Rob Font. If you remember, we picked Rob Font as an underdog there to win that fight by decision. And I'm going right back to the well here, and I'm taking Matsumoto. I think Matsumoto wins. I think he outworks him. I think he outstrikes him. I think he might even get more takedowns than Johns. But if he does get taken down, he'll work back up to the feet and get back to where he needs to be for this fight. So give me Gene Matsumoto, 29-28 unanimous decision. Could be 30-27. I think he's going to look really good here. And I think he wins the majority of this fight for as long as it lasts. So could see a finish, but I'm going to say it goes the distance. Give me Gene Matsumoto to just be better than Johns practically everywhere besides the power. 29-28 unanimous decision for Gene Matsumoto. All right, next fight up is in the featherweight division. You have a battle between Andre Touchy Fili taking on Christian C-Rod Rodriguez. This is an amazing fight. Probably going to be one of your fights of the night. And I know a lot of people are going to heavily lean towards the side of Rodriguez. He's younger. He's got really good fight IQ. He's going to use range and distance control better. He probably can get some takedowns. To be honest, I think this is a really, really close fight. I don't see this being like a complete domination by either fighter. I don't think C-Rod dominates Andre Fili. I don't even think he dominates him in the striking. I think Andre Fili is good enough at using his jab, using the 1-2, using some high kicks. The cross high kick is nice. Switching stances on angles. He's very good at circling, switching stances, orthodox and southpaw. And, it seems that Christian Rodriguez is the type of guy who beats a lot of these up-and-coming contenders, like up-and-coming prospects, I guess you could say. I mean, hell, you could call the guy the prospect killer. He's got wins over the likes of Austin Bashi, huge prospect, just got a win. Cameron Simon, big prospect. Lost his last fight, I believe. I think that was to Malcolm Wellmaker, but still a good prospect at the time. Isaac Dulgarian, close fight. I don't think he won, but Dulgarian gassed out in round 3. But when he gets these veterans, when he gets like a Melky Costa, even though he's not technically a veteran, but I think at this point we could start to kind of call him like he's a little bit more experienced in the UFC than most of these newcomers that Rodriguez is fighting. But when he fights guys like that, when he fights Mel Costa, when he fights, say, Julian Erosa, these guys who have been around the game, they tend to give C-Rod a little bit of trouble. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fili was kind of outstriking Rodriguez. Maybe he got a takedown at the end of round 1 or round 2 and made the rounds really close. I was going to originally say that I thought this fight was going to finish inside the distance because I think there's a submission upside on the side of Rodriguez because I think Fili can change levels and maybe get caught in a guillotine or switch from a guillotine to a Darce or an Anaconda. And I think there's a submission upside. I also think Fili potentially could get a TKO. I mean, he's got good angles. He's got good boxing. He finishes his combinations with kicks. Like we said, the cross high kicks are always there. Solid inside and outside low kicks. I think he could crack C-Rod coming in. But at the end of the day, I think this fight is just going to be a really close fight that goes the 15 minutes and probably ends by split decision. Now, would I be surprised if C-Rod, clearly won the fight and just outstruck Andre Fili, got some takedowns and clearly won? No. Would I be surprised if Andre Fili clearly won the fight and clearly dominated and just outstruck him and moved around and beat him up? I would be a little bit surprised if Fili clearly won. I think if Fili wins, it's kind of like a knockout or a split decision type of thing. But I think this fight is going to be close enough where the boxing of C-Rod's going to look good. Andre Fili's going to use his jab. He's probably going to be faster than Rodriguez on the feet, I think, with his combinations. 1-2 down the middle, good jab. Solid check hook as he's moving around. I think C-Rod will start to land some right hands, maybe a front kick up the middle to the body, and start to close the distance, try to land some knees and elbows. I think in the clinch, the takedowns of Fili inside the clinch could be a problem. I think C-Rod could potentially catch a kick of Fili and get a takedown. Fili scrambles up, gets caught in a submission. C-Rod jumps for it. Fili gets out, but gets some top control time. Then C-Rod, knee shields and gets up to a hip and gets back up. And now we're back on the feet. I think this fight is just going to be a close fight. And C-Rod has issues with these guys who are veterans, who have fought the best of the best, who have been in there with the highest level at the UFC level. He has issues with those guys. I mean, it's just history. It's possible. So with this one, I'm going to say Rodriguez wins. I think he does enough damage. I think there is that submission upside. If he cracks Fili and Fili shoots, I think that subside is there. But at the same time, I think it goes to a decision. I'm going to change my pick. I'm going to take the decision. I'm going to go Christian Rodriguez. Give me C-Rod, 29-28 split decision. I think it goes the distance. I think it's close. I think Fili wins at least one round. I think his striking is a little bit too much for C-Rod early in this fight. So give me Christian Rodriguez, 29-28 split decision. I think he does enough to land some more meaningful strikes on the feet and maybe get some takedowns toward the end of the second and the third and do some work against the fence. So Christian Rodriguez is going to be the pick, 29-28 split decision. All right, next up we have the women's strawweight bout between Yasmin Luncindo taking on Angela Overkill Hill. Another tricky fight. I think Luncindo can compete with Hill on the feet. I think she's going to have the better takedowns. But I also think that the volume of Angela Hill, her output on the feet, her ability to work inside the clinch, it all could cause a lot of issues for Luncindo. Like, I feel like this fight, on paper, Luncindo should win. But I feel like in Angela Hill's career, it's always kind of the same story where she should win, but Angie just makes it a super close fight and ends up either eking out a split decision or losing via a split decision. And I think there's nothing different about this fight. I think Luncindo probably is the better technical striker on the feet, but I feel like the output and volume and the cardio dynamic of Angela Hill could just kind of outwork Luncindo over 15 minutes. And I think Lucindo's smart game plan would be land big power shots on the feet, use the high kicks, and then change levels and get takedowns. Hold down Angela Hill, work from the half guard with the shoulder pressure, land some elbows, land some hammer fists, land some pitter-pat punches so that the ref doesn't stand you up due to inactivity and just kind of hold her down and outwork her over 15 minutes. But on the feet, like I said, I think it's going to be much more competitive than people believe. I think there is a power advantage on the side of Luncindo, but I think the volume, the numbers, the output, the combinations that Angela Hill throws, it could just cause a little fits and little issues for Luncindo to where she's going to land probably the cleaner shots, but the overall more work is going to be done by Angela Hill. And that's just kind of how I see this fight playing out. I think Hill could potentially take over in the third round and have the cardio to push harder than Luncindo. And if it's like 1-1 going into the third round, I wouldn't be surprised if Angela Hill eked out a split decision and it went her way. But if you look at the losses of Angela Hill, I mean, she's 18-14, a terrible record. But a lot of those losses are split decision losses where she could have easily won those. Like maybe her record realistically could be like 23-9 right now, or 23-10, which looks a lot better than 18-14. So I think this fight's going to be close. I think Luncindo is going to use the wrestling and use the takedowns probably at the end of rounds. I think she will get a few takedowns. I think the fighter who will push the higher pace in the third round is going to be Angela Hill. And I think the fighter who lands overall lands more strikes, lands more significant strikes and is more active is Angela Hill. So are they going to take the volume and the takedowns, or the volume and the output of Angela Hill, or are they going to take the takedowns, control, and the stronger, more powerful shots from Yasmin Lucindo? I'm going to take Lucindo by decision. I'm going to go 29-28 split decision for Yasmin Lucindo. But again, I would not be surprised if Hill outworked her and won a split decision. This is another fight where it's very close on paper. It's going to be close in general because most women fights are going to play out close, like in most cases. And I think this is another one where, for the reasons I already stated, I'm going to take Lucindo because I think she'll have the takedowns and the ground control. But I think it's going to be very close. Give me Yasmin Lucindo 29-28 split decision. All right, next fight up is in the flyweight division. You have O'Day, the Jamaican sensation Osbourne, coming back after his knockout victory against Luis Gurule, taking on Steve Astro Boy Erceg, who's coming off of a decision loss to the former champion and the assassin baby, Brandon Moreno. This is one where I think the best play for this fight, to be honest, is the fight to not go the distance. I think Erceg is going to be the cleaner striker, but I also think O'Day, he has a lot of power in that left hand. Like, he knocked out Gurule, but he also dropped, what's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Lazy Boy. Luis Rodriguez, I believe is his name. Or Ronaldo Rodriguez. He dropped Ronaldo Rodriguez multiple times, almost knocked him out. Almost submitted him. Rodriguez ended up coming back and winning. But if you go back and you watch the Kevin Borjas fight with Rodriguez, you could tell he just doesn't have any defense and he leaves his head on the center line. And, you know, Kevin Borjas was just the much cleaner striker. So I think that looks okay for O'Day, but he didn't get the job done there. Then he comes in against Gurule, who I was actually pretty high on. I thought Gurule was going to stop O'Day late. And he just drops him with that left hand and knocks him out. Just picture perfect left hand right down the middle. Boom, knocked him out cold. That was something I definitely wasn't expecting. And I think with Steve Erceg, Erceg is the much cleaner striker. I think he's the better grappler, the much better grappler. And I think the smart idea would be for him to use his takedowns, get on top of O'Day, wear him out, take his back, and eventually lock in a submission. I think on the feet, Erceg, again, he's the cleaner striker. He uses his range pretty good. But I also think O'Day is a long, rangy striker on the feet as well, and he might be able to use his length and reach to catch Erceg coming in. You know, a lot of the times when we see Erceg lose these fights, he's winning on the scorecards, and then he gets hit with a big shot and gets rocked. Or he gets dropped and knocked out like he did against Kai France. In the Alessandro Costa fight, he got dropped, rocked, almost finished in that fight, but came back and ended up winning. I think Erceg is the better fighter, but I just worry about the defensive irresponsibility and the fact that he does leave his head up and his chin up in the air when he's circling away, when he's backing away, when he's using his range. And there's always that chance that O'Day could just come right down the middle with that straight left hand and knock out a guy like Steve Erceg. Erceg is a guy where I think he should win. I think he finishes O'Day. I think he could finish him on the feet because he's the cleaner striker. He puts better combinations together. I also think he could wear him out, use his wrestling, take him down, and just beat him up eventually to where he'll give up a submission probably late in the second round or in the third round. But again, it's a guy I can't totally trust. Like, do I trust Erceg to come in here and dominate O'Day? He should, but I don't trust him because he leaves his chin up in the air. He's been cracked in multiple fights. Even in fights where he doesn't get dropped or rocked, he still gets cracked a lot. I mean, he's a very hittable guy, and I think it looks like he's good defensively because he uses, you know, those long frames and the 1-2s, and he circles well. But when shots are coming back at him, he does tend to get hit, and he does tend to leave his head on the center line. And if O'Day lands that left hand, it would not shock me one bit if he knocked out Steve Erceg. Am I going to pick that to happen? No, I think Erceg wins. I think this is a good fight for him. You know, he was originally set to fight Alex Perez. Perez pulled out. Then he was going to take on Hyun Sung Park, which I thought was a very competitive and interesting fight overall, considering I don't think Erceg was really going to look to grapple there. And on the feet, I think that was a competitive fight. Now he's got O'Day Osbourne, a huge step down in competition. And I think it's going to be good for Erceg. But again, I would not be surprised if that straight left hand cracked Erceg on the chin, because I just don't like the way he defends a lot of the strikes. But I think this is a get-right spot for Steve Erceg. I think this is a fight where he's going to come back, get back on the horse, get a good win, and probably get a finish. So I'm going to take Steve Erceg to win. I'm actually going to take him by TKO. I know a lot of people expect the submission, expect the grappling. Yeah, I think he might grapple, but I think he's going to finish it with either a shot on the feet where he just rocks O'Day and finishes him off with like a volume combination, or he drops him and finishes him with ground and pound. Give me Steve Astro Boy Erceg to win. I'm going to take late second round TKO for Steve Erceg here. I think he beats O'Day. I think he looks good, and I think he gets a finish. All right, next up, we have a battle in the middleweight division, the main event of the evening between Roman Dolidze taking on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. And I think you guys know where I'm going with this. I think you guys know who we're going to be taking. We're going to be taking our boy Fluffy. We're going to be taking Anthony Hernandez to beat Roman Dolidze. I usually don't give my pick out that early in the breakdown, but I think this is a good fight for Anthony. Now, I will say, I think early on, it's very dangerous because it seems like Anthony gets cracked early in a lot of his fights. Against Brendan Allen, he almost got caught in a submission. I believe it was a guillotine or a rear naked choke. He almost got caught in a rear naked choke and almost got submitted. He got hit with some decent shots. And then, like, the longer the fights go, I think he just builds and builds and builds. Against Michel Pereira, that's probably a career best performance from him. He just absolutely dominated and destroyed Michel. Michel landed like one big shot and almost got him with a submission at a certain point. But for Hernandez, just kept on moving forward. Now, against a guy like Dolidze, this is going to be a very dangerous matchup for him to resort to that forward pressure, grappling heavy, chain wrestling style, because Dolidze is a great submission grappler. He'll chain submission attempts together. He'll go for a triangle off of his back, a reverse triangle, switch to a leg lock, switch to a calf slicer, can switch to different types of sweeps off of his back. He is a very well-rounded grappler and jiu-jitsu fighter, but I only give him about 8 minutes to win this fight. Maybe 10. I'll say he's got 2 rounds to finish Anthony Hernandez, or he's going to get broken, he's going to get slowed down, he's going to get outworked, he's going to get taken down, he's going to get grounded and pounded, he's going to get just basically broken and finished late by Anthony Hernandez. Now, I think Roman is live early. Like I said, I think early on the power of Dolidze could be a big problem for Hernandez because he gets hurt in a lot of fights. And in the one fight we've seen him get finished in, it was against Kevin Holland early. He kneed him to the body, landed big elbows, and put him away. He does seem to have issues with taking body shots. Even early against Roman Kopylov, that left kick to the body was continuously hurting him, but he was able to push forward, get in his face, and just kind of outwork him. It's going to be dangerous against Roman Dolidze to get hurt to the body and just run forward and try to pressure him and take him down, because he might just be able to throw up a submission when you get that takedown. He might be able to just jump a guillotine. He might be able to allow you to take him down and then hit one of those scissor sweeps off of his back. He's very good at setting up the sweeps. We've seen that against Jack Hermanson. We've seen that in other fights as well. He can hit very good sweeps. He's also got good knees inside the clinch that we've seen him drop guys like Kyle Dawkins with. Landed big knees, a huge knee right to the eye of Kyle Dawkins and basically broke his face open with that shot. So I think early on, the power and the danger factor of Roman Dolidze is very, very prevalent. I think early in those first 7-8 minutes, Dolidze could finish Hernandez, whether it's with a drop and a submission or just a plain knockout. Because like I said, I think Hernandez gets hurt early. But he will push through. He does continue to move forward. And one thing about Anthony Hernandez is he doesn't get tired. And I do believe that the cardio, like it is for Hernandez in almost all of his fights, it's going to be a huge weapon here against a guy like Dolidze. We've seen Dolidze go long. We've seen him go 5 rounds, I believe. I think he won as a big underdog in a 5-round fight sometime recently, but I could be wrong. But I think against Anthony Hernandez, it's just a different thing. So he's going to have to, be worried about the danger factor. He'll probably get caught in like 2 or 3 submissions within the first 7 or 8 minutes of this fight. I'm not sitting here telling you it's not going to happen, because it probably does. I think he probably will get hit with a big shot and potentially get rocked early in this fight as well. But I think he probably will survive. It's scary. I think this is one of the most dangerous fighters in terms of finishing equity that Anthony Hernandez has fought before. So it would surprise me if he got finished, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised, because he does tend to have that those early jitters, and that could be where he gets hurt. But I believe he's going to survive that early storm, and I think the pressure is just going to get to Roman. I think the constant combinations, the takedowns, the chain wrestling, the constant takedowns. I mean, he'll get 10, 15, 20, 25 takedowns. And I think that is going to slow Roman down. And the more submissions he throws up, yes, it's going to make Hernandez hesitant, but I also believe it's going to gas out Dolidze. And then those pitter-patter shots, switching from the back take to the guillotine, to the arming guillotine, back to the back take, to the darts, to the anaconda, back to the ground and pound. I think eventually it's just going to slow cook Roman Dolidze. That's what I believe Anthony Hernandez is. He is a slow cooking marauder in this division. And I do have a play on him to end the year as the middleweight champion. Doesn't look like it's going to happen because he probably doesn't get a title shot until next year, and there's a lot of people in front of him. But I do think he's going to beat Roman Dolidze. I think he's going to have to survive, like I said, those first 2 rounds. It's going to be scary for him, those first 2 rounds. If Dolidze wins, I think it's in the first 2 rounds. But when we get into round 3, I think it's the fluffy show. I think the volume, the forward pressure, the constant takedowns, the submission attempts, and the wrestling all get to Roman Dolidze. I think he beats him up with elbows and ground and pound, and I think he will finish him with a TKO late. I could see a submission. So if the number on the submission for Hernandez is very high because he's fighting Dolidze, I would maybe take a shot on that because I think that is something that could definitely happen where he just breaks him down and then grabs his neck because he doesn't want to continue to be in there. So let me check real quick. I believe Dolidze got finished early in his UFC career. Let me check this out. Oh, he didn't get finished, but he lost to Trevin Giles early in his UFC career, and I think most of that was mainly due to the grappling and just overall getting tired in this fight. Now, I think he has improved his cardio, but I just think Anthony Hernandez is a different animal. So I'm going to take a TKO just because I am a little worried that maybe Dolidze will just defend the submissions, but won't be able to get up, and the ground and pound and elbows will just be too much. So give me Anthony Fluffy Hernandez to win. I'm going to take him via a late 4th round TKO against Roman Dolidze. It's going to be tough early. He could get finished, but I like Hernandez here. I think he's going to break down Roman Dolidze. I think he's going to survive those early scares and just beat him up, take him down, rinse and repeat with the takedowns, land a lot of ground and pound, float to different positions, and eventually TKO him with elbows from the top. So give me Anthony Fluffy Hernandez to win. I'm going to go with a 4th round TKO for Anthony Fluffy Hernandez over Roman Dolidze. All right, that's it for my UFC Vegas 109 preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and lock up your favorite submission on the notification bell in honor of the main event this week so you don't miss any future uploads from the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.